Welcome back. Well, I hope you enjoyed the expert tracks. I know I learnt a lot. I'm delighted to welcome back to the studio Hugh Jones, who is the Managing Director for the Carbon Trust, responsible for our advisory business, providing strategic climate change consulting to businesses and organisations. Hugh, there was some fantastic insights today. I don't know how you make a summary of all of that, but the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ralph, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yep, I'm Hugh Jones. It's my pleasure to welcome you back to the plenary session as we move towards the close of today's Accelerator Net Zero Summit. And it may be dark here in British wintertime, but there was certainly plenty of illumination in the event today, and I will do my best to summarise that. I hope you'll agree that we really had a great set of speakers with, I think, outstanding content above all else this afternoon. And at the Carbon Trust, we often say that the response to climate change works at more than one level. And I think that was certainly true today. The sessions reflected both the long view, the strategic, systemic, transitional issues at the heart of climate change, but at the same time, they addressed the here and now, the practical nature of the journey to net zero, which is a trajectory that we all need to be on without question. And I think the sessions also showed how, the whole event has shown how participative net zero actually is. It's all about the sharing of information and of ideas. So we started what seems like a while ago now with Lord Turner setting out the high level issues with typical conviction and clarity. And he emphasized the importance of the shape of the net zero trajectory, the need to accelerate the decarbonisation of energy, buildings, industry and transport, even though they're in, Lord Turner would say, fairly good shape, that we need to accelerate, and also to seek new solutions for agriculture as well as domestic heat, both of which he identified as problem areas. And I'd like to thank Lord Turner on behalf of Carbon Trust for, I think, inspiring both confidence but also instilling realism about the path ahead. We then moved on to the panel on the energy crisis, which I think did a lot to affirm faith that the energy crisis can have a positive impact, that is having a positive impact in some ways on boosting decarbonisation, but also faith in our ability to achieve the clean energy transition to net zero. But the panel did point to some large gaps that need to be addressed, notably on heat, transport, and indeed harder to abate sectors. So a big thank you from us to the panelists, Nina from REA, Vijay from Virgin Media O2, Garrett from Smurfit Kappa, and Dominic from We Mean Business Coalition. And both the panel and Lord Adair's keynote emphasized the incredible progress that has been made and continues to be made on renewables, which are now forecast to overtake coal globally by 2025. And they also pointed to the vital role that governments have to play in ultimately regulating the markets so that businesses can achieve progress to net zero. And given the need to accelerate the trajectory, it is clear that much more still needs to be done in the UK as well as elsewhere. So after the plenaries, we then split into the simultaneous tracks, the streams, which were climate transition planning, collaboration and engagement, and scaling action and ambition. And of course, there was definitely, to take my word, some rich content in all of those sessions, but you won't have been able to see them all live, of course, because they were simultaneous, but they will be made available to watch back. So I'm going to spend, with your permission, a little time just summarizing the key themes of these sessions so that you know what to look for when you receive the links from us after this event. All three streams, as with the earlier plenary sessions, covered some really interesting, meaningful themes. And I've tried to pull together a few of those, which you can, as I say, catch up with in the sessions. So the first theme was the value, really, of the net zero journey, not just to the planet and to society, but actually to future-proof your own businesses and organizations. Whether you're well on the way to net zero or just at the very start, this is a journey for all of us. Secondly, collaboration came through very strongly. Collaboration up and down value chains, within and across industries, on technology and innovation, for example, with the finance community. It also works at a local level. We heard about local governments and businesses adopting a whole systems approach to net zero decarbonisation. And we heard about community levels, for example, for implementing energy solutions. Thirdly, a really rigorous approach to measuring impacts, risks, opportunities, using primary data where possible to enable the best management decisions, and also to allow for credible, transparent disclosures and claims around your achievements, and to avoid accusations of greenwashing, which one of the sessions showed is there are many perceptions of greenwashing. It's really, really important to avoid that. And at the Carbon Trust, we work with many of you already on your organizational scope 3 quite often, or indeed product footprints and impact measurements. So it's certainly an area that the team knows very well. The fourth theme was the resilience and managing the risk so that you can be a viable business organization in a climate constrained and then ultimately a net zero world. And the expert team here they went into some detail really, showing how to extend the appraisal of risk to include areas like resource and land use, systemic dependencies on others, and the social license to operate. These are all real value adds to the existing TCFD framework. And we see that framework as a really key tool in managing your organization's transition to net zero and indeed unlocking the finance to drive it. The fifth theme that came out today was really working across and within your organizations at the most senior levels, making the net zero trajectory a fully empowered strategic objective for your organization. You can't achieve this anymore in a sustainability department alone. The next very strong theme was the really important, the crucial importance of technology, of innovation, of circularity, and of digitalization in enabling the transition, including in one session how to quantify and contextualize the positive impacts of products and services in use. There was also a specific session focusing on heat decarbonization, a key technology approach which helps to address a major current issue, at least non-domestically, that was raised in the earlier plenary sessions. We heard a lot about the role of green finance in enabling the transformation to net zero, and how, again, we address it in our expert team. And finally, but certainly not least, coming across in pretty much all the sessions, a need to think long-term as well as short-term about the new ways of providing today's products as tomorrow's services, for example, in radically different ways. And these transformations, these will affect all of your organizations and businesses, whatever sector you're in. And we're ensuring that the organizations that we're working with already on the route to net zero are taking the time today to consider how to address this in the future, because transition requires forethought and ultimately planning and innovation. So as I said, all of the sessions will be made available, and I can assure you there's great content in all of them. For the practitioners among you, I would particularly draw your attention to our Route to Net Zero standard, which has been mentioned a number of times today, and which a select number of organizations have already started to achieve. Our Route to Net Zero standard is a new offering. It provides a value-add approach to helping you reach your net zero targets year on year on year, to keep to that all-important trajectory. So it's one of the offerings that we have, but quite an important one. Details on our website. So really that summarizes the sessions, as well as thanking, of course, all of our guest speakers and all of our home speakers and moderators and our excellent events team. I would like to thank you, the audience, for your participation, for your excellent questions, your poll responses, and above all, for your commitment to the collaboration on net zero. Thank you. And now Ralph will introduce the closing video.
Thank you, Hugh. Yes, I'd like to introduce a very special keynote from the chair of the Carbon Trust, Baroness Brown of Cambridge. Baroness Brown is a British engineer and crossbench member of the House of Lords, present chair of the Carbon Trust and the Henry Royce Institute, and she was also Vice Chancellor of Aston University from 2006 to 2016. Baroness Brown, over to you.
The last couple of years have emphasised the appalling consequences of our changing climate. We're all affected. It's not just small island states and the Southern Hemisphere. We've seen over 200 deaths from extreme flooding in Germany and Belgium, rapidly growing wildfire and drought problems in the USA, as well as catastrophic flooding in Pakistan and terrible drought in Ethiopia. And these are just a very few examples of the global impacts we've been seeing. 2022 is now officially the hottest year on record in the UK. We experienced temperatures of over 40 degrees C in the summer for the very first time, accompanied by significant increases in heat-related deaths. The Met Office estimates that climate change made this 160 times more likely. Attribution studies for global events regularly now highlight disasters that are 100, 200, or even 300 times more likely because of climate change. That could mean that what was a 1 in 300 year extreme event can now be expected almost every year. And we're only at 1.1 degrees of warming. Rapid action to reach net zero globally may still be able to give us a chance to keep warming down to no more than 1.5 degrees. But we're running out of time to secure this future. 2 or 3 degrees of warming now look much more likely. If 1.1 degrees brings this much destruction and damage, another half a degree is a pretty bleak prospect for all of us. It will certainly challenge our ability to adapt. Every fraction of a degree of warming we can avoid is precious in both human and in economic terms. Delivering net zero is urgent. We've seen a lot of focus by governments and businesses on target setting for decarbonisation and net zero. And of course, this is great and an absolutely essential start. But it is now critical that we move on to delivery. The Climate Change Committee in the UK has told the government that it is adopting a laser focus on delivery and has developed a much broader set of indicators for a continuous assessment of the UK's progress. Unfortunately, the economic impact from 2 years of COVID and now the war in Ukraine means that national governments globally are being distracted from the focus on climate change mitigation and adaptation. So it's even more important that companies, local government and communities, as well as all of us as individuals, are working together to deliver action. Moving beyond setting targets to focus on delivery means having delivery of net zero as a core part of the organisation's, or indeed perhaps the household's, strategy. It's not just the targets, it's about every decision and action taking the climate impact into account and making changes to reduce it. It's a cultural change that has to be supported by everyone in the organisation. It isn't just a management instruction. Fortunately, of course, most people are keen to be part of an organisation that is taking real action on climate. So whilst the change is not easy, it's likely to be a motivating one for many staff. But it's also about being honest. The targets will be difficult. We must be prepared to admit when we miss them. We must learn from our failures and keep changing how we do things and indeed what we do. No country or organisation can do this alone. The steel industry can't decarbonise unless the electricity industry does. We can't decarbonise transport unless the automotive industry can produce zero emissions vehicles. And the automotive industry can't decarbonise unless the minerals needed for batteries are mined sustainably and with zero emissions. Energy, buildings, industry, transport, farming, all the key sectors are highly interdependent, and reaching net zero will require cross-sector collaboration along with plenty of innovation. And our international supply chains, whether it's for minerals, for food, for car parts, the energy interconnectors, hydrogen perhaps in the future, mean that we must collaborate internationally to reduce our emissions, as well as to reduce the impacts and become more resilient to climate change. COP28 this year in Dubai is the culmination of the 5-yearly global stocktake of the implementation of the Paris Agreement, a stocktake of collective progress towards meeting the ambition to keep warming below 1.5 degrees. It will undoubtedly underline the need for more urgency and more action. We can all support this process by focusing on delivery now. So I do hope this meeting has fired you up for action and provided both inspiration and ideas.
Well, I'm certainly fired up for action, but that brings us to the end of today's event, sadly. We hope you enjoyed all the discussions. As Hugh said, the videos will be made available soon, so if you missed anything, you can watch it back. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with a couple of virtual events, one on Africa and one on Latin America. You can find details about these events, our initiatives and more insights on our website at carbontrust.com, including the newsletter, which I strongly recommend because it's a great way of keeping in touch with all the news about this industry. And also you can follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you for watching, and from the whole of the Carbon Trust team, thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.